right. And thanks to everybody who's joining us. Got a few more. Sunil and Sierra, I think, have joined us recently. Sorry if I missed anybody. Thank you all for being here, especially for the first of this new format we are trying out, the mini workshop. So we're going to hear from Mark today, talking a little bit about cultivating a culture of participation online. Just a couple of notes about how we're doing these. We're trying to do this in a very compressed format. So Mark is going to present. We've got the chat turned off. And I'm going to ask you to turn your mics off as well. We have a Q&A option set up. You should be able to access that through the More button on your Zoom toolbar. So if you do have questions, you can ask them there, and then I will try to respond to. If I can respond to those, I will. Otherwise, Mark will come back to those at the end. So this is going to be much more like a conference presentation than one of our typical workshops, and I'll be interested to hear what folks have to say about that. Yeah. So with all that, I'm going to hand things over to our speaker, Mark.
Okay. It's interesting because the title says Show Up and Speak Up, Cultivating a Culture of Participation Online, but it's not for online. We're doing this online, so somehow that got posted over. But it will help you for online as well, I guess, I hope. It's weird because I'm a little more nervous doing this than face-to-face. I think it's because I can't see Lisa's eyes real closely. So when she rolls her eyes, if we're face to face, I can see that and go, oh, okay, I better move on. So anyway, it's a fast, quick survey of some things that I've found in the past couple of months about how to get folks there. It really started last spring. I taught a 3,000 level course for the first time in a long time, and it was shocking how many students just did not show up. And I've for every class, I've also been influenced by my children. I have 3 kids who've gone through the college experience, and I've heard them talk about their professors and talk about mutual professors and say, oh, I never went to his class because all you had to do was read the book. It was a waste of time. And so I think this is something that's important for us all. And so let's get started. I want you to know, first of all, that attendance and participation cannot be totally controlled by mandating it and giving them extra points. I've found that in the past. So there is an attendance myth that we can manage attendance by these policies that we have, but I've found that doesn't really work, and the research has found that as well. And so today we're going to focus mostly on creating a measurable classroom value and give you a few just easy tips to engage with your students. Because if you're engaged with the students, they feel more of an obligation to come to class, and they feel more at home in class. So let's get started with the myth is that it's the fault of the students. The reality is that attendance is a strategic response to the value of your class. So if you've got a 7,000 page PowerPoint and they can just read that, then why come to class and do that? So there is evidence that in classes where you do engage more in active learning and active participation, students are less likely to fail. And so I think that's something important for us to realize, that in the quest for attendance, we're also fulfilling our mission in helping our students to become better leaders and better students, and helping them along. So objective 1 is we want to shift some motivation, and part of that motivation is instructor immediacy. If we are there for them, and they know that we care for them, and we know when they aren't there, they are more apt to show up. I've made it a practice last couple of years, and students are kind of shocked, but if you miss a class from me, I will email you and ask how things are going. And I think that's something that it's not a guilt trip. It's actually letting them know that they weren't there. And I noticed that, and they're important for that. So I try to get as close to them and give them as much, of my presence and help them realize that I do care if they show up. So one of the we've got 6 strategies. The first is the name challenge. I have trouble learning names, and so I have a lot of different ways to do that. One of the problems I'm dyslexic, and one of the problems is if I ever get somebody's name wrong, it sticks with me. And so on that first day of class, I really focus on pronouncing their names correctly, writing down the pronunciation, because if I start out with pronouncing your name wrong, and I know that sounds like those microaggression things, but it's just the way my brain works. So one thing that you can do is commit to learning 3 student names every class period. I think that works. I read a book called A Teacher's Guide to Learning Students' Names. It's a really small book, so and she had these 4 things that she listed. Attend, one, that word is, I guess she should have used a different word, but my word would be pay attention. So how many times have you introduced yourself to somebody and they told you their name, and right after they told you your name, that you forgot it? And so when you're hearing their names, make sure you're present and making sure that you're there and listening. And again, repeating their name to make sure that, say it again, so that you're pronouncing it correctly. I've got it made because my last name is mispronounced by everybody and half the people in my family. So I can use that as an excuse. Listen, I know this, I don't want to say anything that is, I don't want to say it wrong, so help me out. There's the book also talked about associating them with something, and I've never been really good with mnemonics, and it said don't do mnemonics because that takes a lot of cognitive load. But last semester I had 3 Kelseys in one class, and 2 of them one sat right behind the other one. And so the way that I've remembered that, and I have to be very careful that you don't associate it with something, negative, like, this is mean Kelsey, or this is nice Kelsey. It was Kelsey with the 2 dogs, because she showed pictures of her dogs. And so always see her. And now I remember she's one of the Kelseys, but I also know a little bit more about her. And so I associate it with that. And the second thing is to retrieve their names over and over. Let me show you what I do. I just go to Banner. Here's a screenshot of Banner. And in the class, you have their names and their images, but those images are really small. But if you click on their names, you will get a larger image and you'll get a lot of information about them. And so what I do is I print one of these for every one of my students. And so I'll go through this before class. And that way I have this retrieval system. And, one of the things that, the negative about this is I have to have my students promise not to change the way they do their hair or anything during the semester, because that'll throw me off. But it does help me to have those. And what I do on the first day is I would have their name and their image, and I would print out, ask them where they're from, ask them what their major is. I do other things that we'll talk about in a little bit, but it helps me to connect with them. And so today I did a exit poll or exit cards, tickets, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And I just said, put something on there about you that you'd like me to know. And so when I go back on Thursday, I have those cards and I will say, when I call their name, I will say, oh, so you enjoy cooking. What kind of cooking do you do? And that can, again, help me connect with them. So that's a good principle for me to use. Another one, which I think it was named really interesting. It was the fear of missing out. That if you, I intentionally try to have these 10-minute conversations in class that are that you can't get anywhere else. And that way, when you miss class, you're going to say, wow, they're talking about, they keep referring to last semester. This was not course related, but last semester, one of my students suggested that I buy, oh man, a certain kind of drink. I can't remember what it is. And it was one of those drinks. It's like a pre-made alcoholic drink. And so every day I would say, we need to try. Have you tried this drink or have you tried that drink? And so folks who miss that class were always saying, what's the deal with this? And so I think when you have something, a hook in your class or something, a special story about your material, I think you have a really a good hook and they don't want to miss out. And so you can create a FOMO moment and spend about 10 minutes talking about something. Try to relate it to the class, but I'm not necessarily so. All right, so capturing data. I just mentioned I'm terrible about remembering to take attendance. So what I've been doing is having entry tickets and exit tickets. The entry tickets, what I do with that is before class, I will create a form, a Microsoft form, and have a question, and then I'll have the QR code on the screen, and so they can go to that form, answer that question, and that way I already have that way I have an easy way to get attendance, and that way also I close that down 5 minutes after class starts, so that those who came in late, they will have an opportunity to show that they were present with an exit ticket, but it also kind of encourages them to show up on time. And I love to use AI. I use AI to generate entry tickets because I don't want to ask the same thing every time. And so sometimes I'll give them this entry ticket and say, okay, I need a question about the chapter before we get started. And that way we have a conversation piece. The exit tickets are very important to me as well, because when you read that, sometimes it's the muddiest point, one of those things we've done forever. But I look at those tickets and then when I come to class the next time, I actually say, well, you had a muddiest point. Let's clarify this. And it also shows them that I care about them and there's a feedback loop. And so that's really important for me to use as well. A couple of ways to reduce participation anxiety. I think some students hate it when you call on them. So there's a couple of hacks that you can use here. One is you can say, all right, I'm going to give you 60 seconds. Let's do a pair and share. That's something that you can do. You can also just say, I'm giving you 60 seconds to think about this, write it down. And that way they'll write down a comment or a question, and then you can just ask them to read it. So you're not asking them on the spot to do something really quickly, because a lot of us don't think well on quick on our feet. And so the think, pair, share is a good way to do it, and also a good way to take 60 seconds and write down a question. And so if they don't have anxiety when they come to your class, they're more likely to want to show up at your class because you're not going to embarrass them. Another one that I learned from Jay, and this has been around a long time, but I didn't know that much about it until last year or so, is the tilt framework. Um, I use this framework. What you do is on a selected assignment, and again, I use AI. I have I'll put my assignment in an AI, and I'll say, create the tilt framework for this. And what it does is it explains what the purpose of that assignment is, the task that they're going to do, and then the criteria of how you're going to grade it. Again, a lot of students have so much anxiety and they don't know what you're asking them to do, and you want to be as transparent as possible. So I'll go a little bit more into this in a second, but there is um, a ton of research here, and I have the tilt framework here. Again, trying to relieve them of their confusion and anxiety. But the research is really strong on this. It creates confidence. Students have a better understanding. They don't go to an assignment and go, I'm not really sure what they want. They want 10 pages or 2 pages or 3 pages. Um, Research says there's higher persistent rates of students, especially first generation students of color, because they feel more comfortable in classrooms. And it kind of demystifies academia, because one of the things I do in my classes is that I don't ask a lot of data collection information. I ask them to critically reflect on things. And a lot of times they're just ready to, give you information back, memorize information and give it back. And so I demystify that, but by explaining, what critical thinking is, giving them examples of that critical thinking. And so it helps them quite a lot. Again, why are you doing this? I think I talked to Jay about one of his discussion board problems. I hope it's okay for me to share this, but he said, students were seeing discussion boards as just busy work, and so they would just use AI in it, and it would be meaningless. But if you tell them why you're doing that particular discussion board and what they're supposed to get out of it and how you're going to grade it, then that's going to make those assignments more meaningful. And I put all of my major assignments on Brightspace and with a tilt framework on them. And I also found this last year Fink's taxonomy, which I don't have time to talk about it, but look that up. It's better than the Bloom's taxonomy. And so what I do is I'll go to AI and say, do a tilt framework, and then I'll look at it and make sure it's right, because it's not always right. And then I'll go on to and one good way to explain why they're doing something is to demonstrate which one of those Fink's taxonomies they are reflecting on. Momentum nudges, I do keep up, not just midterm, but every couple of weeks I'll look and go over my attendance, and I can email them. And because sometimes, I used to get all these emails that would say, how many times have I missed? And so this way I am telling them, hey, you're getting close to that limit, or hey, you've missed a solid week here. We need to get together. And so I can ask them to come to my office hours. One of the things I do for that as well is I give them 40 points added to a quiz for every time they come to my office. You'd think they would all have 600, points on every quiz because they said I could do it, every day. I was like, sure, nobody does that, but it demonstrates to them that I care about that. And so when I give them that nudge, I can say, hey, come see me, 40 points. All right. Whoops. There we go. So one thing I would ask you to do is think about one of these things. Bart and I will be posting this to our wiki. I'll give you the slides and everything because we went through those 6 strategies pretty fast. And so, and we'll have um, this recording up quick soon. So think about one thing that you can do, add to your class so that you get to know your students more. One more little piece of um, active learning that you can throw in. I think I need to leave a little time for questions. So have anybody put any questions in, Jay?
Nothing in the Q&A, but if folks have questions now, I think would be a great time for them to speak up.
Sure.